What dark secret are you hiding from everyone? Story 1. After my parents separated, my stepfather moved in almost immediately. He started behaving strangely around me. Touchy, too familiar. I was just a kid, maybe 9 or 10, and I didn't understand it, but something felt wrong. One evening, my older sister walked in on him doing something that confirmed my fears. She screamed, told my mother, and the police were called. He was taken away. For a while, my mom seemed protective. I even slept in her bed every night. Then one afternoon, we came home from school and saw my dad's van outside. He told us Mom had called earlier, saying if he didn't come get us, she'd get rid of us. She wouldn't even come outside. My brother and I left with our dad, moving across state lines. She never reached out. Later, we found out she let the stepdad come back. It broke my heart. She chose him over us. Years later, I finally cut her out of my life, right after I began addiction recovery. I haven't spoken to her since. People think you need your mom, but sometimes the most damaging people are the ones you're related to. Story 2. I've been a silent bystander in both my parents' infidelities. When I was about 6, my mom started seeing someone while my dad was stationed overseas. My older brother told me, swearing me to secrecy. Then, a couple of years later, my dad began sneaking around with his assistant. He'd say we were going to the arcade but would take me to her place instead. Her roommate would babysit me while they disappeared into the bedroom. They're still married, and I've never told either of them that I know. Sometimes I wonder if they're both aware and just pretending. People have suggested maybe they had some kind of agreement, but that doesn't add up. They hold really conservative views, and we were raised in a household where cheating was considered unforgivable. If there was an understanding, they never explained it to us. Instead, they dragged us into their mess and expected us to lie. I still feel weird about it today, like I was an accomplice to something I didn't even understand at the time. I've never brought it up, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. Story 3. When I was 10, a female teacher began singling me out. At first, I thought she was just being kind, but it quickly turned into something inappropriate. I tried to tell a relative, but they brushed it off. Years later, I ran into her at a bookstore. I froze, but then something shifted. I was 24 and no longer a helpless child. I started following her online and learned she was still teaching. Worse, she was part of a local dating club and had shared posts that hinted at more victims. She referred to them as her classroom pets. I pretended to befriend her through the group, collected screenshots, and eventually, I printed hundreds of flyers with her photo, quotes, and email address. I dropped them in her neighborhood, on windshields, and even in faculty mailboxes. I expected someone to confront me, but no one ever did. I don't feel guilty. I feel empowered. People always say to let the past go. But when someone still poses a threat to children, staying silent isn't an option. If the system won't stop her, I will. Story 4. 2 days before my 17th birthday, my dad called me in the middle of the night. He had been struggling with depression for a long time and would call often to talk, usually after drinking. That night, he told me he was done. I was exhausted and overwhelmed, so I hung up. I didn't mean to be cruel. I just couldn't handle another late-night breakdown. On my birthday, I found out he had taken his own life. Everyone said it was a tragic coincidence, but I knew better. I've never told my family about that phone call, especially not my brother, who idolized him. Since then, I've had this recurring nightmare. I'm in a grocery store, and I see my dad pushing an empty cart. I try to catch up, but every time I turn a corner, he's further away. I wake up in a panic, drenched in sweat. I don't know if I'll ever be free of the guilt. I wish I had picked up the phone the next day. I wish I had said something comforting, but I didn't, and now I live with that silence. Story 5. I was married to my best friend for 13 years. He was charming, funny, and adored by everyone. We had a daughter together, and I thought life was perfect, until she was 5 and told me something horrifying. She said he made her touch him. I called the police immediately. During the investigation, I learned he had been arrested in college for a similar offense involving boys. It was buried because his family had political connections. I was mortified. To protect our daughter, I told everyone he had cheated and moved out of town. In reality, he was serving 5 years in prison. I focused on raising her, therapy, private school, anything to give her a chance at a normal life. But when she went to college, she reconnected with him online. I warned her to be careful, but she cut me off. That was 4 years ago. I still send her money for medical school. She doesn't know the full story, only that I disapprove. It's surreal to live in this limbo, knowing I did the right thing, but still being treated like the villain. Story 6. For a few years, I lived with my grandmother. After I turned 18, her health started failing. I tried to care for her, helped with errands, and coordinated her hospital visits. One night, while watching TV, I heard our dog whining from her bedroom. I knew something was wrong. I could have rushed in, called 911, but I didn't. I sat still. She had suffered for months, barely able to eat or speak. I didn't want her final moments to be filled with fear or poking needles. So I waited. After she passed, I called the home nurse as if I had just discovered it. I didn't tell anyone that I had been awake, alert, and aware. She was 92. My only regret is that she didn't live to see me graduate. I had been expelled earlier that year for skipping class, and she had been so excited about my future. I sometimes wonder if she would have fought harder to stay if I had been walking across that stage. But at least now, she's at peace. And I hope she somehow knows I never stopped loving her. Story 7. When I was 10, I was walking our golden retriever home from a friend's house. He was off-leash and cut across the lawn of this bitter old woman at the corner of our street. She was always yelling at kids, and that day she was spraying something on her rose bushes. My dog didn't bark or even go near her, but she still sprayed him with what I later found out was pesticide. He yelped and ran home with me. I hosed him off and watched him cough for hours. I didn't tell my parents. I thought they'd be mad I let him off-leash. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I snuck out of my bedroom window and walked to her yard with a pair of scissors. I cut down as many of her roses as I could reach, stuffing some in my jacket like trophies. I never got caught, but she stopped yelling at me after that. Looking back, it wasn't the most mature response, but it felt like justice. Even now, I smile when I walk past that house. Her roses never quite grew back the same. Story 8. In high school, I was the quiet kid who always did well in class. Straight A's, front row, never caused trouble. There was this guy, loud, sarcastic, always pushing boundaries but smart enough to never get in real trouble. He'd tease girls, mock classmates, and act like he ran the place. One day, I decided to get back at him in a small, untraceable way. I had this weird ability to make a high-pitched whistle without moving my mouth. It sounded like a teapot boiling. So, every now and then, I'd make the sound during class. Teachers always thought it was him. He got detention a few times, and once a teacher even called his parents. I never got caught. It was juvenile, but it gave me a strange sense of power. I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted him to feel a little of the frustration he caused others every day. Sometimes I wonder if he ever figured it out. Probably not. But for once, the quiet kid got the last laugh. Story 9. About 2 years ago, my wife, her mom, and I bought a house on a quiet stretch of land. The neighbors were friendly, but something felt off. One night, a guy knocked on our door asking for gas. Our driveway is nearly 200 feet long, so it didn't feel like a coincidence. Then one Sunday morning, four sheriff's deputies showed up saying a 911 call had been made from our address. We don't even have a landline. They mentioned the previous owner's name, and I explained we had just moved in. Later, while doing yard work, I mentioned the visit to a neighbor. He casually said, "Oh, probably because of the shooting." I asked what shooting, and he hesitated before saying the old homeowner had shot his daughter's boyfriend during a fight in the kitchen. The boyfriend's friends had retaliated by setting off fireworks and slashing tires. Our state doesn't require disclosure of violent events, so we had no idea. Everything made sense then, the weird vibes, the strange knock. I told the neighbor not to mention it to my wife or her mom. They'd never sleep again if they knew. Story 10. When I was 9, my cousin, who was 13, would occasionally kiss me when no one was around. I didn't think much of it at the time, but something always felt off. I never told anyone. Years passed and we drifted apart. We reconnected briefly when I was in college, but he seemed like a different person, quiet, distant. A year later, I heard he had died while cleaning a gun. His guardian said it was an accident, but I always had my doubts. He was raised around firearms, knew how to handle them. I also knew he'd struggled with depression and had suffered a head injury in a car crash the year before. I've never told anyone my suspicions. Not his family, not even my partner. It's one of those things you carry quietly because bringing it up would only cause pain. I don't know if what happened between us as kids had anything to do with how he turned out, but I still think about it. Sometimes I wonder if he remembered. Sometimes I wonder if he felt as confused as I did. Story 11. Cutting my dad out of my life was the hardest but smartest thing I've ever done. From the time I was 10 until I turned 18, I tried again and again to build a relationship with him. It never worked. He used to say I should have died when I was sick in kindergarten, that if I hadn't survived, his affair wouldn't have been exposed, and his marriage wouldn't have ended. By the time I was 13, he was locking me in closets when I visited. At 16, he thought throwing money at me could fix things. Didn't. I was already working, already numb. He has no idea what my life looks like now. He's never met his grandchild, never asked about my job, my health, anything. Sometimes I wonder if he even cares. Other times, I hope it eats away at him. I'm not bitter. I just finally understand that not every parent deserves a second chance. I still struggle with self-worth, but seeing my own child helps me reject the lies he fed me. I'll never treat them the way he treated me. I broke the cycle. Story 12. This isn't my secret, it belonged to my mom. In high school during the late 1960s, she dated a guy named Jimmy for years. They planned to marry after he finished college, but then he came back with heartbreaking news. He had gotten another girl pregnant and had to marry her. What he didn't know was that my mom was pregnant too. By him. She never told him. Instead, she made the painful decision to induce a miscarriage by taking something unprescribed. Years later, when I helped her make a Facebook account, she asked me to look him up. They started messaging through my profile. It was awkward seeing their "I love you" sign-offs. He was still married, and so was she, but the connection was clearly still there. She passed away a few years ago, and I've never told anyone. Sometimes I think about messaging him, telling him the truth, but I know it would just reopen old wounds. It's not my story to tell. Still, I wonder how different their lives, and mine, might have been if the truth had come out back then. Story 13. When I was 8, I desperately wanted to fit in with the older boys in our neighborhood. Most of them ignored me except for Mike, who was 19 and finishing high school. One afternoon, he invited me inside for a soda. I felt special. He was cool, funny, and older. But once we were alone, he and his friend Sean started asking questions that made me uncomfortable. Over the following months, they manipulated me into doing things I didn't understand. I knew it felt wrong, but I was too young and afraid to say no. When Mike left for college, it stopped. I felt relief, but I also missed the attention, which confused me even more. I never told anyone. Not my parents, not even my therapist, until years later. About a decade ago, I found out Mike was arrested for harming another boy. I wasn't surprised. I'm certain there were others like me. Sometimes I think about coming forward, but it's been so long, and I'm not sure what good it would do now. Still, knowing he was held accountable gives me a strange sense of closure. Story 14. I live in a small town where everyone seems to know each other. But lately, it feels like I've disappeared. I used to be part of a tight group, but after a disagreement with one member, things fell apart. We had a group chat, weekend get-togethers, and inside jokes, but now I'm not invited to anything. I tried reaching out, even apologized, but it didn't work. The hardest part is seeing their posts online. I follow a few of them on a backup account they forgot to block, and I see the parties, the dinners, the smiles without me. I've started to wonder if they ever really liked me or just tolerated me. The loneliness eats away some days. I dream about moving to a new place where no one knows me, starting fresh. I'm not depressed in a clinical sense, but I'm deeply sad. I miss feeling like I mattered. I miss laughing without wondering if people are laughing at me. Sometimes just existing here feels like a mistake. If I ever get the chance, I'll leave and build a life where I'm not just an afterthought. Story 15. Years ago, I was the treasurer for a small church. On the surface, everything seemed above board, but behind the scenes, the two pastors were siphoning off thousands each month. They gave themselves raises without approval and handed out funds to friends despite board objections. Nobody wanted to confront them, not the elders, not the congregation. They weren't technically breaking laws, but it was unethical. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I accidentally misfiled some financial records, moved money around, and made it look like the church was on the brink of collapse. By the time anyone realized what had happened, the damage was done. The pastors couldn't report it without risking exposure. I took the fall quietly. People think I was incompetent or careless, and I've been shunned by many in the community. But a few people, those who knew what was really going on, pulled me aside and said thank you. I've built a successful career since then, unrelated to church work, and I don't regret what I did. Sometimes justice comes in strange forms. Mine came through a spreadsheet. Story 16. My son is 23 and has schizophrenia. He was diagnosed a year and a half ago, and although meds have stabilized him, that very stability has brought a painful awareness. He knows what he's lost, what the future might look like. My ex-husband and I co-parent him with everything we've got, but there's a secret I carry. If he ever chose to leave this life, I would understand. Of course, I would be devastated. He's my entire world. But watching him suffer, seeing the way he struggles to hold on to reality, to friendships, to hope, it's crushing. Sometimes I feel guilty for thinking this way, like I'm betraying him. But I know peace is something we can't always provide, no matter how hard we try. I'd never tell him this, or anyone in my family. They'd never understand. They'd think I was giving up on him. But I'm not. I'm here every day, doing everything I can. I just wish that were enough. I will keep fighting for him, but I also know that love sometimes means accepting things we can't fix. Story 17. Technically, I have a son, but no one knows that except his mother and me. She was a close friend, a kind woman who had terrible luck with relationships. In her early 40s, she decided she wanted to be a mother, even if it meant doing it alone. She tried artificial insemination, but after spending over $100,000 with no success, she was nearly out of time and money. That's when I offered to help. We made a legal agreement. No parental rights, no child support, complete anonymity. It worked after a couple of tries. To everyone else, she conceived through a donor. I don't see him or visit, and I've kept my distance just like we agreed. Still, sometimes I wonder what kind of kid he is. I wonder if he has my smile or my stubbornness. I don't regret my decision, but it's strange knowing there's a child out there who shares my DNA and will never know me. I hope he grows up happy, strong, and loved. That's what matters most. Story 18. In middle school, there was a girl named Rachel who was taller and tougher than anyone else. She bullied people constantly, especially kids smaller than her. One day, after she shoved me in the hallway, I snapped. I went to the stairwell during lunch and scribbled a nasty rumor about her in pencil on the wall. I didn't think anyone would see it, but later that day she did. She assumed her ex-boyfriend had written it and lost her temper. She found him outside and attacked him in front of dozens of students. She was suspended for a month, transferred schools after, and I never saw her again. I never confessed. Years later, I ran into her at a local event. She didn't recognize me, but I recognized her voice instantly. I found out she had spent years in anger management and still struggled with rage. It haunts me that something I did out of spite may have changed her life forever. I wanted her to feel embarrassed, not to lose everything. I still don't know if I should have spoken up. Story 19. About a decade ago, a man pushed his way into my apartment after I answered a knock. He was huge, clearly drunk, bleeding from his hand, and holding a broken bottle. He started shouting about demons, the apocalypse, and demanded cash for protection. I tried to reason with him, but he got aggressive. I told him I had a knife, though I didn't, just hoping to scare him. When he stepped toward me again, I dashed to the kitchen, grabbed the largest knife I could find, and swung wildly. I don't think I hit anything major, but there was blood. He stumbled out. A few days later, I heard from a neighbor that a man's body had been found a few blocks away. Tall, muscular, wounds on his arms. I never told anyone. I cleaned up the blood, threw out the knife and waited. But no one ever came. He had a record, and the cops seemed uninterested. To this day, I don't know if I killed him. I just know that I survived. And I've lived with that shadow ever since. Story 20. No one knows that I'm both gay and dealing with meth addiction. To the outside world, I'm a dependable, clean-cut professional with a decent job and a long track record of success. I've even managed to get promoted during my addiction, which only made it easier to hide. Before the pandemic, I sought out random hookups, but when isolation hit, I spiraled. I started using meth with strangers, chasing highs that erased my shame. Eventually, I contracted multiple STIs and underwent surgery for severe anal warts. The doctor told me the procedure would permanently narrow my anal canal, effectively ending a part of my sex life. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my family. I recovered alone in silence. In some ways, I'm grateful it forced me to stop the risky behavior. But the addiction didn't magically disappear. I've relapsed more than once. It's a constant fight. I want to open up, to be honest with someone, but I'm afraid of losing everything. So instead, I wear a mask every day and hope no one sees the truth beneath it. Story 21. My daughter isn't biologically mine, but I've raised her as if she were. Back in 2018, I relapsed and my partner left me. I got clean, turned my life around, and we reconciled. She was already pregnant when we got back together. We'd endured multiple miscarriages before, so I welcomed the pregnancy as a fresh start. The first time I held that baby, she smiled at me like I was her whole world. I became her dad that moment. Her biological father was involved in drugs and had a history of violence. He doesn't know about me, and we live less than an hour from him. I've been trying to convince my partner to move, but she's hesitant. My daughter is almost 4 now and starting to call me Dad. Even my own parents don't know the truth. I worry about how they'd react, especially my father, who was kept from me for most of my childhood. I work in construction in a rural area where raising a child that isn't yours is often looked down on. But none of that matters. I would do anything to protect my daughter. Story 22. I cheated on my first husband, but it wasn't for the reasons people assume. He was emotionally abusive, controlling, manipulative, and belittling. I didn't even realize how much he'd broken me until a mutual friend pointed it out. That friend was also in a troubled marriage, and after he left his wife, we started an affair. I hoped it would push my husband to leave me, but he refused. He saw me as property, something to own. Eventually, I found the strength to pack my things and walk away. The man I had the affair with, we got married. That was 32 years ago. My kids from my first marriage call him Dad, and he's been the only father figure they've ever truly known. I never told anyone the real reason I cheated. They think it was lust or a midlife crisis. But it wasn't, it was desperation. I didn't have the courage to leave until I had someone to catch me. I wish I could say I handled it better, but I don't regret the life I built afterward. Story 23. My husband died in a car crash in 2016. He was 32, I was 30, and we hadn't even been married for 2 years. The relationship had been rocky, fast-moving, full of fights and makeups. When he died, I was devastated. I grieved deeply. But over the years, something unexpected happened. My life got better. I went back to school, earned a degree with honors, and landed a job that pays more than I ever imagined. I moved to a new state, started fresh, and now provide a life for my child that I used to only dream about. Here's the part one never say out loud. If he hadn't died, I'd probably still be stuck. I might have been a stay-at-home mom, barely scraping by, always arguing. I'm not glad he's gone, but I don't miss him the way people think I should. I've built something beautiful out of the wreckage, and while I'll always honor his memory, I don't live in it. Life gave me a strange second chance, and I took it. Story 24. This isn't my story. It's my best friend's, but I've carried it with her. A few years ago, she took one of those DNA ancestry tests just for fun. When the results came back, she was surprised to find a distant match in New York. Shortly after, a man with her last name messaged her, claiming to be her half-brother. He said their father had an affair after immigrating in the late 80s, and that he was the result. My friend ignored him at first, but he and his wife kept reaching out, sharing specific details about her dad that matched up. Eventually, I convinced her to talk to her father. She said he looked stunned and left the house without saying a word. They never discussed it again. Things calmed down, but I know her view of her family was forever altered. She never responded to the half-brother again. Sometimes I wonder what he's doing now or if he ever found closure. I'll never bring it up again, but I won't forget it either. Story 25. I'm in my 30s, and my family believes I'm a straight man dating a sweet, conservative woman. What they don't know is that I'm pansexual and have been with a wide range of people, men, women, trans individuals. My girlfriend of 4 years is transgender. She passes easily, and no one in my family suspects a thing. I support her fully. She doesn't want anyone to know her background, and I respect that. To the world, she's a woman, and that's all that matters. I'll never tell my family. Not because I'm ashamed, but because it's none of their business. My mom, in particular, would never understand. I've built a life where I can be myself with the person I love, and that's enough for me. If anyone ever found out and had a problem with it, I'd defend her without hesitation, even if it meant cutting ties with my own blood. Love doesn't need a label. It needs understanding and respect. And I've finally found both. Story 26. When I was younger, my father would touch me in ways no parent should. It started subtly. Slaps on the backside, 2 long touches on my thighs, and escalated over the years. It went on for about 7 years, as far as I remember. My mother knew. My siblings knew. No one did anything. I told 2 people in my life, one who lives on another continent, and one close friend who's like a sibling to me. To this day, I've never confronted my family about it. They'd probably deny it, or worse, say I misunderstood. But I didn't. I remember every moment. Sometimes he'd laugh it off, sometimes he'd get angry. I hated being home. I hated being touched. I still do. That's why I spend so much time in my car or crashing at friends' places. I just turned 18, which means I can finally seek help without involving my parents. I know I have a long road ahead, but at least now it's mine to walk. I'm scared, but I'm also ready. Story 27. About 15 years ago, a local drug dealer I knew asked me to hold on to some cash for him. He was facing serious charges, 3rd offense, heroin and coke. He figured I was clean and wouldn't draw attention. The bag he gave me held $125,000 in $100 bills. Every couple of weeks, he'd call and ask for a few grand. I'd peel off the bills and meet him at random spots. Then one day, he vanished. I found out he'd been arrested again, this time for good. A month into his sentence, he died by suicide. His girlfriend kept calling me, demanding the rest of the money. I ignored her. She would have used it for drugs, and he never left instructions. I kept the last $10,000. I never told anyone. I used it to pay off my car and move out of town. Sometimes I feel guilty, but mostly I don't. That money came from ruining lives. I just redirected what was left. No one came looking for it, and I never looked back. Story 28. I'm not suicidal, but I'm exhausted in a way that's hard to explain. I've had severe sciatica for nearly 4 years. It's disabling, but not enough to qualify for most support programs. I live in Canada, so at least I'm not drowning in medical bills, but the pain never stops. I love my wife and kids. I still cook, do the shopping, and try to be present. But I've stopped dreaming. I can't read, struggle to enjoy new shows, and barely leave the house unless I have to. I often just rewatch old movies because anything new takes too much effort. I save my energy for evenings with my wife. That's the only part of the day that still feels normal. I don't talk about this with her because it would break her heart. I'm not giving up. I just feel like I've already let go of anything that used to make me feel alive. Every day I try to contribute so I won't feel like a burden. I don't want to disappear. I just want to stop hurting all the time. Story 29. In 2008, I scammed my employer out of nearly $50,000. They had a tuition reimbursement program, maintain a 3.0 GPA, pay up front, and get reimbursed at the end of the semester. Scholarships and grants were supposed to be deducted. I had a full ride, but I doctored the receipts, removing any mention of outside aid. HR didn't know how to verify it. Every semester, I got reimbursed for money I never spent. By the time I graduated, I had saved enough to buy a new car, pay off credit card debt, and put a down payment on a condo. I left that job shortly after. The company was a large auto supplier notorious for worker exploitation. I don't feel bad. They made millions cutting corners and avoiding regulations. I just played their game better than they expected. I've done well since then. No one ever found out. And honestly, even if they did, I'd sleep just fine. Story 30. I'm in love with my best friend and have been for years. We've known each other since college, and over time, my feelings shifted from platonic to something deeper. They're kind, funny, and know me better than anyone. But they're also in a long-term relationship, and I could never be the reason that ended. So I keep quiet. I laugh at their jokes, give dating advice, and smile through the pain. I've even imagined telling them what it would be like, how it might feel, but I always stop myself. The risk is too high. If they don't feel the same, it could ruin everything. I'd rather suffer silently than lose them completely. Some nights I lie awake replaying conversations, wondering if they ever suspected. Maybe someday I'll tell them. Maybe I won't. For now, I'll just be their friend. The one who shows up, supports them, and keeps this secret buried under every "I'm fine." Story 31. Back in elementary school, a girl from my church invited me over to play Barbies. Her house was everything mine wasn't. Neat, warm, full of laughter. She had a whole collection of Barbie accessories, including a tiny toy can of dog food. For some reason, I really wanted it. Maybe it felt like a piece of the normal life I didn't have. So I slipped it into my pocket. When she came to my house a few weeks later, she saw it. I had written my name on the bottom, thinking that would somehow make it mine. But she recognized it immediately. I lied. She didn't believe me. That was the last time we hung out. Years later, we ran into each other at a party. We talked for a bit, but I didn't bring it up. I always meant to apologize, but never did. That tiny can haunted me for years, not because of its value, but because it symbolized everything I felt I lacked. I stole something small, but what I really wanted was to feel like I belonged somewhere. Story 32. I'm surrounded by people and yet feel completely alone. My so-called friends constantly poke fun at me. It's disguised as joking, but it wears me down. I work in customer service, so I already deal with angry strangers all day. I used to think I was just being sensitive, but over time, I've come to realize it's not normal to feel this drained by people who claim to care about you. Even when I try to vent or open up, they either mock me or change the subject. I've started avoiding group chats and making excuses not to hang out. Dating hasn't helped either. Every guy ghosts or loses interest before I can even ask why. I just want to feel like someone's favorite person. Not the punchline. Not the backup plan. I'm not struggling with thoughts of self-harm, but I'm tired of laughing at jokes that hurt and pretending I'm okay when I'm not. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending that this version of friendship is enough. I want more. I deserve more. Story 33. Lately, I've been fantasizing about buying a big piece of land, fencing it off and making it clear that no one is welcome. I imagine warning signs, dense hedges, and maybe even cacti lining the interior. People exhaust me, especially the ones with noisy dogs that bark at all hours. I know it's not socially acceptable to say you don't like your neighbors, but I don't. I crave privacy more than connection. I'd build a tiny house with blackout curtains and spend my days in silence, reading or gardening or just breathing without interruption. I get why some wealthy people isolate themselves. It's not about arrogance, it's about peace. I don't want to be rude or hurt anyone. I just want to be left alone. I used to love community, but now it feels like everyone's always in your business, always making noise, always expecting something. I'm not angry. I'm just tired of sharing my space with people who don't respect it. If I ever get the chance, I'll create a little sanctuary where quiet isn't something you beg for. It's guaranteed. Story 34. I don't keep secrets from my husband, but there's one truth I rarely say out loud. I wish I were one of those effortlessly likable people. You know, the type, always invited, always included, the one people gravitate toward. That's never been me. I try to make plans with others, but I'm usually the one reaching out. Most of the time, they're busy or simply don't respond. I grew up an only child with socially awkward parents, and I think that rubbed off on me. I overthink everything I say and constantly feel like an outsider. One woman I hang out with often talks about all the fun she has with other families, but never invites mine. I smile through it, but it hurts. I've considered ending the friendship, but I'm not sure if it's worth the drama. I don't need dozens of friends. Just one or two who make me feel seen. For now, I keep showing up, keep trying, but inside I'm tired of being the one who tries hardest and gets the least in return. Story 35. People think I joined the military to serve my country. The truth is much darker. When I was 19, I was assaulted by someone I trusted. He filmed it, then told me if I came back to his place, he'd give me the tape and destroy it. I went. It happened again. Later, he claimed the footage was already online. I dropped out of college without telling anyone why. My dad was furious. He'd paid for my education and never forgave me for leaving. I didn't have the heart to explain. A few years later, I enlisted. Not out of pride, but because I didn't care if I lived or died. I volunteered for every dangerous mission, hoping something would happen. It never did. I served for over a decade before being medically retired. Ironically, those years were the most stable of my life. I didn't have to think about the future. Now I'm in therapy trying to rebuild. I've never told my family the real reason I left school. I don't think I ever will. Some truths are too heavy to share. Story 36. My best friend assaulted my ex-girlfriend. I wasn't there when it happened, but she told me everything afterward. She didn't want to report it, didn't want the attention or the fallout. So I've kept quiet. But I hate him for what he did. I've stopped going to events where he might be. I've pulled back from our shared friend group, and no one really knows why. They think I'm just busy or antisocial. The truth is I can't look at him without feeling sick. What hurts even more is that he told people I was somehow involved, that it was my fault. He twisted the story to make himself the victim. I know this wasn't the first time he crossed the line with a woman, but everyone keeps looking the other way. I want to say something, to protect others, but I'm stuck. I don't want to betray my ex's trust. I don't want to blow everything up without knowing it'll help. But staying silent feels like betrayal too. Story 37. When I was 11, my cousin and I found a body on our grandparents' farm. It was under a tree, barefoot, and already starting to decompose. We stared at it for a long time, unsure what to do. He looked like a man in his 30s, wearing a black shirt and brown pants. We didn't recognize him. For reasons I still can't fully explain, we decided to bury him. We thought we were doing something respectful. We said a few words, dug a shallow grave, and covered him up. We never told our family. Occasionally, we asked neighbors if they'd seen anyone matching his description, but no one had. No missing person reports ever showed up. Now, more than a decade later, that grave is still there. We visit it sometimes, quietly, without saying much. We still don't know who he was or how he ended up there. It's like a shared secret we carry. A mystery we stumbled into that never got solved, and probably never will. Story 38. I was about 8 when it happened. My grandparents brought home a seafood meal, and I immediately grabbed the fried shrimp and devoured them. All that was left were the tails. A little while later, my younger sister asked where the shrimp were. Our grandma told her we were supposed to share. Panicked, not wanting to get in trouble, I handed her the box with only the crunchy tails inside. She bit into one, gagged, and spit it out. From that moment on, she swore off shrimp. For years, she wouldn't touch the stuff. I carried the guilt with me for decades. I never told anyone. Then, in our late 20s, she decided to try shrimp again at a restaurant. And she loved it. That's when I finally admitted what I'd done. I expected her to be mad, but she just laughed. All that time, she said, shaking her head. It became a running joke between us, but I still feel a little guilty. I ruined shrimp for her for almost 20 years. All because I was a greedy little kid. Story 39. When my mom divorced my dad, she didn't waste time before moving in her new boyfriend. He was charming in public, but behind closed doors, he was too handsy for comfort. I was just 9 and he made me feel watched, like I was always being measured. One night, my sister caught him creeping into my room. She screamed. Cops came. He was arrested. For a while, my mom acted like a real parent. Held me close, let me sleep in her bed to help me feel safe. But a few months later, everything flipped. We came home from school, and my dad's van was parked outside. My mom never came out. My dad told us she had called him and said if he didn't come get us, she'd get rid of us. Trash bags with our clothes were already on the curb. Turns out she let the creep back in. She chose him. Over me. Over us. Years later, I cut her out of my life for good during my recovery. No more calls. No more fake apologies. Some people say you only get one mom. I say good. One was more than enough. Story 40. When I was 15, I had a sleepover with 3 friends. We stayed up too late, watched R-rated movies we weren't supposed to, and shared secrets. You know the kind. Who do you have a crush on? What's the worst thing you've ever done? Then one of them asked, have you ever touched yourself? There was a pause. Half of us laughed, the other half looked away. Later that night, while everyone was asleep, I woke up to someone next to me breathing heavy. I turned over and realized one of my friends was under the blanket, clearly doing something. I didn't move. I was frozen, half curious, half disturbed. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened, grinning, pouring cereal like he hadn't just had a solo session inches away from me. I never brought it up. None of us did. But after that night, I couldn't look at him the same. We drifted apart. To this day, I still wonder if he knew I was awake, or if he wanted me to be. Story 41. At 22, I got a job working at a tech repair shop. It was boring, but the pay was decent and the perks were distracting. My boss's daughter had just turned 19 and worked the front counter part-time. She had this chaotic energy, always chewing gum, snapping selfies, wearing crop tops that skirted the dress code. I tried to keep it professional, but she didn't. One night after closing, she cornered me in the stockroom, said she was bored, and asked if I wanted to hang out. I said no. She smirked, leaned in, and whispered, "You'll change your mind." The next day, her dad called me into his office and asked if anything happened. I denied it. She must have said something, but I never found out what. A week later, I quit. Not because I had to, but because I knew if I stayed, I'd eventually say yes. Story 42. I once dated a girl who was obsessed with filming everything. Vlogs, dance videos, makeup tutorials. I didn't mind, until I found out she'd been recording us during sex. She never told me. I only found out because I borrowed her laptop to submit a job application and found a folder labeled Private, Winky Face. There I was. Full view. No warning. I confronted her and she said it was for us. That she thought I'd be into it. I wasn't. I made her delete everything in front of me. We broke up a week later. It's been years, and I still feel uneasy when I see a camera pointed in my direction, especially if it's blinking red. Story 43. I was the best man at my cousin's wedding, which meant I had to give a speech, keep the groom calm, and party with a bunch of strangers. The bride's maid of honor was gorgeous, clearly single, and not shy about letting me know. We ended up in the coat closet at the reception hall. It was messy, fast, and kind of thrilling, until we knocked over a rack and 2 coats fell into a puddle of spilled champagne. She laughed, panicked. We snuck out and rejoined the crowd like nothing happened. No one ever said anything, but I'm pretty sure someone saw us. Now every time I go to a wedding, I check the closets first, just in case someone else had the same idea. Story 44. During my final year of college, I developed a crush on a literature professor. She was sharp, sarcastic, and wore red lipstick like it was armor. She once caught me staring and said, "Eyes on your paper, not my legs." I nearly died. After graduation, we ran into each other at a bookstore. She was off duty, dressed down, and asked if I wanted to grab coffee. We made it halfway through our lattes before she leaned in and said, "You're not my student anymore." We didn't date. It was more like a one-semester epilogue. No strings, no regrets, just two adults who both liked poetry and tension. Sometimes I still wonder if she ever did that with anyone else. But I like to think I was the only one who got an A+ after class. Story 45. I once sent a sext to my boss. Not on purpose, I swear. I had two conversations going, one with my boyfriend, the other with my boss about a client presentation. I meant to send, "Can't wait to get home and pull you into the shower. I've been thinking about it all day." Guess which chat I sent it to? My boss responded, "I assume this was not meant for me." But noted. I was mortified. I considered quitting. But the next day he acted like it never happened, completely professional. To this day I triple-check every message. And I never use the word shower in a work email. Story 46. On a business trip, I got a little too drunk at the hotel bar. I was with a coworker I'd always found attractive. Let's call him Mark. We were both tipsy, laughing, sharing stories that probably weren't HR approved. Then he said, "Want to head up to your room?" I said yes. We didn't sleep together, but we did everything else. Clothes stayed on, mostly. Hands and mouths were busy. It was messy and fueled by cheap whiskey and bad decisions. The next morning, we didn't talk about it. We flew home and went back to normal like nothing happened. But every time our hands brush in the office, I feel that spark. And I know he does too. Story 47. My neighbor does yoga in her backyard every morning. Tight leggings, sports bra, and zero awareness of the fact that I can see her from my kitchen window. I've never said a word, never stared too long, but I always happen to make coffee right as she's finishing her session. One day she caught me watching. She waved. I waved back. The next morning, she stretched facing my window. That was 2 years ago. We haven't spoken, but we both know the routine. It's not creepy. It's unspoken mutual appreciation. And hey, I've never missed a cup of coffee since. Story 48. A friend once told me she wanted to sleep with me just once. To get it out of her system. We were both single, both lonely, and I said yes. It was good. Better than expected. But afterward, she cried. Said, "I thought it would fix something. But now I just feel more broken." We stayed friends, but never spoke of it again. Sometimes sex doesn't solve anything. Sometimes it just exposes what you were trying to hide. Story 49. The attic. When I moved into my first home, the attic was locked shut. The realtor said the previous owner used it for junk and forgot the key. A week after moving in, I started hearing soft creaks above my bed around 3 a.m., like someone pacing. I figured it was old wood settling. One night, I woke up drenched in sweat, feeling watched. I looked up. The attic hatch was open. I grabbed a broom and climbed up. A stained mattress, a stained bucket, and a small camcorder were in the corner. The red light was blinking. I called the police. Turns out, someone had been squatting up there, recording me while I slept. A man with a history of stalking and assault. They caught him 3 blocks away, hiding behind a church. I moved out the same week. I still sleep with a flashlight under my pillow. Every once in a while, I dream about the red light blinking, watching me, waiting for me to forget again. Story 50. The last fort. My best friend disappeared our senior year. No note, no fight, no goodbye. Just vanished. Everyone assumed he ran away. But I knew something wasn't right. 3 days before he vanished, we had a campfire in the woods. He told me he'd done something bad. I laughed it off. He didn't. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You'll understand someday." He walked home that night, never seen again. The case went cold. Last month, I got a letter with no return address. Inside was a folded note. "I buried it at our fort. You know the one. I haven't gone back. I know exactly where it is. A buried secret waiting to be found. But I was the last person to see him alive. If I go digging and find something, I don't know if I'll ever come back from it. Sometimes I drive past the trailhead, engine running, heart pounding, but I never get out. Some things are better left buried. And some people don't just disappear, they make sure they're forgotten. Story 51. Behind the dumpsters. I was working night security at a strip mall when I saw a guy stumbling behind the dumpsters. He was barefoot, shirt soaked in blood. He said he'd been mugged. Claimed someone jumped him behind the liquor store. He looked wild, eyes too wide, smiling too much. I radioed for help. As soon as I mentioned the police, he sprinted off into the darkness. Turns out he wasn't a victim. He was a suspect. A woman had been attacked in the alley behind the grocery store an hour earlier. The description matched him. They never found him. The last known sighting was the footage from my security camera. For weeks, I kept checking over my shoulder. I started carrying a pocket knife. Then a bigger one. Sometimes I wonder, did he know I was calling the cops? Did he see my face clearly? I don't work nights anymore. I haven't told my new boss why. Some things are too twisted to explain. And I still check the dumpsters every time I take out the trash. Story 52. Parking lot thrill. I met a guy off a dating app at 10:30 p.m. We were both bored, horny, and impatient. We agreed to meet in the lot behind Target. He pulled up in a beat-up Corolla. I climbed into the back seat. We didn't talk much, just started kissing. Hands everywhere, clothes mostly on. Halfway through, headlights hit the window. A security guard knocked on the glass with a flashlight. I scrambled to zip up my jacket. The guy just smirked and rolled the window down. The guard gave us a look like he'd seen it all before. Move along, he said. We drove to another lot, finished what we started. I got banned from that Target for 6 months. He ghosted me the next day. And honestly, I don't regret it. There was something about the risk, the rawness, the thrill of almost getting caught. But I do keep a blanket in the car now, just in case the back seat gets busy again. Story 53. Wrong door. At a college party, I drank too much and needed a bathroom. I wandered upstairs and opened the first door I saw. Inside were 2 people. A girl crying and a guy holding a knife. They both froze. He slammed the door shut so fast, I nearly fell backward. I bolted downstairs, heart pounding. I told the host, who laughed it off. Probably just drama, he said. I called the cops anyway. When they arrived, the room was empty. No one matching their descriptions was found. Everyone assumed I was drunk and hallucinating. But I know what I saw. The image of her face. Terrified, smeared mascara, silently begging me to do something. Still haunts me. I stayed sober for a long time after that. Not because of the booze, but because I never wanted to feel that powerless again. I check every room I walk past now. A habit I can't shake. Because you never know when you'll open a door and find something you were never meant to see. Story 54. The tattoo mistake. My ex and I got matching tattoos after 3 months. A little symbol on our hips. Hidden. Private. Just for us. 2 weeks later, she dumped me. 1 week after that, she started dating my roommate. He saw the tattoo before I even told him we'd had one. Said it was cute. I nearly punched him. Now I've got this permanent mark that reminds me I was someone's impulsive mistake. People ask what it means. I say it's from a video game. They nod. No one questions it. But every time I look in the mirror, I think about how fast people change. Their love, their loyalty, their bodies in your bed one night, someone else's the next. I've had it lasered twice. It's faded, but not gone. Like her. Next time, if there is one, I'm sticking to bracelets. Story 55. The tape. I trusted him. That's what makes it worse. We were long distance, so I sent a video. Just me in bed, talking dirty. No nudity, just enough to make him smile. Or so I thought. 2 days later, people at my college started acting strange. Whispering. Laughing. One guy quoted the video word for word. He leaked it. Sent it to a group chat. I confronted him. He said he didn't mean for it to get around. Like it was a bag of chips, not my dignity. I reported him. The school gave him a warning. That's it. I stopped dating for a year. I deleted every photo, every app. Now, I don't send anything I wouldn't want on a billboard. Not because I'm ashamed, but because trust has an expiration date. And mine ran out. Story 56. The roommate. My college roommate seemed normal, quiet, studious, kept to himself. Until one night he came home drunk, punched a hole in the wall, and passed out on the floor. I found a bloody knife in the sink the next morning. He said he cut himself cooking. But we didn't have any food. Or pants. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time. The next morning, he was sitting outside my room, legs crossed, smiling. Said he'd heard me moving and wanted to chat. I moved out that week. Told the RA I had a family emergency. I never saw him again. But I still think about that knife. And the smile. Some people don't need a reason to snap. They just wait for the right moment. Story 57. The kiss that never happened. We were both 17. It was a party. We were dared to kiss. Here's the twist. She was my cousin. It was supposed to be a joke. But we did it. Just 1 second. No tongue. No passion. But it happened. The next day, we didn't talk. We didn't look at each other. Family events after that were weird. We found reasons to stay in separate rooms. Now we're adults. Married to other people. We hug at holidays, make small talk. It's normal.